Hi class, this is Social Service 215, Social Problems and Social Action, Chapter 16, War and Terrorism. So war as a social phenomenon. War, organized use of collective violence by political actors, states, or non-states against other political actors to achieve political, ideological, or economic goals. Terrorism is the unlawful use of force or violence to intimidate or coerce a government to further political or social objectives. The changing faces of war, so you have many different forms of war you need to be aware of. Violent political repression, genocide, colonial control, war on resources, international conflict, proxy conflict, continuous skirmishes. So chapter 16.1 talks about the trend in state-based conflict, so please review in great detail. The cost of war, so human cost is death and injuries. Economic cost is war preparation, continuation of fighting, rebuilding, and disruption and market demand. The cost of war, you have mobilization to war accompanied by strong narratives for unity and nationalist identity. The final option for states due to high cost is war. Peace and anti-war movements. War influences popular culture. War leads to social change by pressuring existing social structures to adjust, transform, and sometimes be dismantled and rebuilt. Vulnerable groups most affected by war are women, children, and racial minorities. And then there can be a rift between the military and civilian life for soldiers. Terrorism as a social phenomenon. Terrorism is difficult to define. Labeling a group or individual as a terrorist is a political process. That's wonderful that you need to know. Labeling a group or individual as a terrorist is a political process. There's state terrorism, which you should please research, and post 9/11 attacks. So 9/11 was the biggest terrorist attack in history. It made terrorism a priority threat. Radicalization is recruitment, involves radicalization of prospective members. It's a process by which individuals enter terrorism by adopting radical political or social positions. Identifies terrorism as a legitimate instrument for pursuing positions. So then there's counterterrorism. It's how a country responds to a terrorist attack in an attempt to prevent future attacks. Typically, there's an international collaboration between states and intelligence agencies, and creation of a specialized tactical team to deal with terrorist threats. So legal tools are the United States Patriot Act, so please review that in great detail. Offensive measures include tracking down of terrorists and their assets across the globe. Aggressive state instrument designed to deal with urgent and dangerous problems. However, this produces consequences that affect civilians, non-combatants, and innocent individuals. So we look through this using theory to examine war and terrorism. So structural functions would say perspective comes from war and terrorism perform social functions, increase social solidarity by uniting around common threat, manifest functions of war, protection of country, and promotion of societal goals. And then the latent effects or latent functions are unifying communities and developing financial markets. Conflict theory is a perspective, states that war and threat of terrorism promote agenda of military-industrial complex, benefits from war making and terrorist threats. Terrorism is a term used by legislators and politicians. And then there's policy implications as well. So please read this in great detail. You definitely want to know this information here. Then symbolic interactionalism, this perspective war and terror involves symbolism, creating heroes, villains, common values, and design of collective memory. Creation of a nationalist narratives and personal interpretations of social problems. So we have our special theories on war and terrorism. We have Karl von Clausewitz, its functions, focused on relations between state, armed forces, and society. Then you have political economy, focused on relationship between war, politics, and economy. Social movements and terrorism, focused on examining social mobilization and its political outcomes.